Shalomi homies. I'm here with the turkey feather to say a word about life, the individual life as an act of surrender and revelation and remembrance, rather than what the world has told us that life is about, an act of constructing, building an identity and an ego that is hopefully worthy of praise and love and acceptance by our peers, by our family. The truth is that we are all already somebody. We don't need to become anybody. We need to remember the somebody that we already are, the somebody that God made us to be. You are perfect and whole and full of intrinsic purpose and value and meaning. You have a destiny. God gave you all of that. You are all of that. And so this is what we're here doing, is hopefully coming to recognize and disidentify from and release those things which we are not, in order that we might reveal who it is that we are at the core, whole and complete. Right? And then with that revelation, with that realization, with that remembrance, we can begin to walk our destined path, live out our destiny, which is a beautiful, beautiful thing. It is to be in the flow. It is to see magic happening all around you all of the time, because it's all magic. But many of us are blind to that because we're distracted by doing the bidding of this world, trying to prove ourselves, trying to construct an identity and an ego, becoming identified with all of the societal expectations and projections. And all of that distracts us from our destiny. How do I know that? Because I do know that. I'm not just riffing or philosophizing or hypothesizing. I have remembered who I am, and I am currently living out my destiny. No doubts in my mind. I am in the flow. And life is magic, and it is beautiful, and it is a miracle. How did I come to this place of remembrance? Well, through every single thing that I ever encountered, every person I ever met, every experience I've ever had, all of it. My life couldn't be any other way, because it is and it has been what it has been. And a big part of surrender is just accepting what is. Right? You can't hope to be in the flow while resisting what is. That is to be holding onto the banks of a river and being pelted with debris when you could just let go and float on down the river and see where it takes you. That is life. That's how life should be. That's how it's supposed to be. If you want to live out your destiny, you got to just float on down that river. And it will deliver you to the shores of a paradise. I assure you. But most people are clinging to the shore, afraid of what lies ahead, even though what they are currently experiencing is pretty bad, because they're getting pelted in the head over and over again. You know. So what are the life experiences that I've had that have led me to this place? What has my journey been like? It's been full of abuse, trauma, difficult things, you know. Um, Perhaps that's why I also came into this life knowing there is a God, you know. Maybe it was that knowing that helped me survive all of the hard things that I went through. Because I do recognize that some people don't know there is a God. That's part of their experience and life journey, is like questioning that. I never had that, but you know, some people have quote unquote easier lives. They don't have as much trauma or as much abuse, and that comes with its own challenges, right? We all come in with different um a different hand, different cards we're given, and we have to choose. We have to use our free will and decide how we're going to play these cards, right? So my hand was full of abuse, neglect, trauma in my childhood, but also, you know, an ace. And that ace was, oh yeah, God is real. I know God. And I got angels all around me. That was just part of my reality as a child. And this journey of self-realization, of remembering who I am, who God made me to be, of stepping into my destiny, part of that was actually going into a cocoon, a dark night of the soul, experiencing a spiritual alchemy, which involved all of my past traumas, and things that had been projected upon me and heaped upon me as the scapegoat child. Having all of those things come up and be projected out in real time, in my life in a matter of 8 months. I basically relived all of my past trauma, not in a psychedelic way, in real life. Like, all of this stuff was coming back at me. It came out of me, and then I was faced with it again, with all of the knowledge and wisdom that I had accrued over my life. It's like God said, okay, you're ready to be put in the furnace, you know? And it was alchemy. I ended up at one point in a mental institution, and actually not just one, but a series of mental institutions, one after the other. I got caught up in the mouth of the beast that is pharmakia, you know, and that beast didn't want to let me go. It wanted to make me a pill puppet. But the state of mind that I was put in as a result of what I underwent in those hospitals, it was hellish. I lived out my own personal hell, which was all of my trauma, a lifetime of trauma manifest in the people around me who were saying things that my mother used to say to me, or that my father used to say to me verbatim, like bizarre. You know, my mother used to tell me, my father would abuse me, and then I would cry, and then instead of my mother comforting me, my mother would look at me with disdain and disgust and contempt and tell me, you're not pretty when you cry. You know, and so I was in this hellish state of mind on all these drugs, and I was having nurses look at me in the same way that my mother would look at me, with contempt and disgust, and tell me to get away from them. And I had nurses tell me that I was ugly when I cry. That's not a thing that, you know, nurses typically say that I'm aware of. But we don't know what goes on behind closed doors, right? Well, what was going on behind closed doors for me is like these nurses were acting as a mirror of my past trauma. I had nurses kick me. hold me down, refuse to call me by my name that God has given me. And put my birth name all over everything. I had to wear it on a name pin. It was written on my pillow. I had to sleep on it. It was as if my past was just like attacking me full force. It was. And this was the final battle for me in my awakening. And there are many, many other things that I could, specific things that I could, rattle off here. But this is something that you will go through when awakening to yourself. If there are things inside of you, traumas, pains, things you are identified with that are not in harmony with or in alignment with your true self, it at some point will have to be projected out into the world in real time for you to engage with and finally disidentify with. Dispel the spell, right? Because people are under a spell. When they don't know who they are, they're engaging with an illusion. It's a spell that has been cast upon us by this world. Lies that have been told to us, that have shaped and molded our reality in a way that isn't true. So, it is alchemy. Life is alchemical. Because we are spiritual beings, we are physical beings, we are emotional beings. All of these aspects of ourselves are working together all of the time to create our reality. And when we finally get all of these things in harmony, that's when we start seeing more and more of the truth, having the eyes to see and the ears to hear. So yes, life is meant to be an act of discovery, revelation, and unveiling, not a construction, not a proving, not a building up of the ego. That takes you away from your destiny, away from self-realization. So, spending time in quietude, alone, in reflection, anything that can create a sense of ease in the body and in the mind is going to aid in the process of surrender, right? Anything that distracts you, anything that makes the external the locus of control, that's acting not in your favor if you are a person who wants to realize your destiny. Because you do have one. You do. And there's nothing in this world, nothing this material world or this matrix could ever deliver to you that would come close to touching the peace that you will experience when you remember yourself. This world is vain. It's all vanity. It's all a construct of the limited minds of men trying to do their own will, which is why we see chaos and destruction and death and disease all around us. That is the results of building and constructing rather than allowing and surrendering and going with the flow. I guess there's not anything else I want to say about that. This video is a little clunky, but these tattoos, they're alchemical tattoos, or alchemical symbols. And when I was in that cocoon of the dark night of the soul, when all of these things, all of these pieces of emotional and mental shrapnel were coming up to be purged and be dealt with, when that was happening, I had a moment where I was on a ketamine journey. I hadn't heard the voice of God in over a year as part of this whole experience of the dark night of the soul. And I finally was able to procure some ketamine. It was recommended to me by a friend because I was ready to end my life because I was in such suffering. And because my ego didn't want to die. That's what it was. My ego didn't want to die. And that's the final battle. I had a strong ego because I had gone through a lot of suffering and trauma, and that's a lot of how our egos get constructed. Is it's a defense mechanism. But as I was laying there in my bed, having done some ketamine, the light of God entered my room, and everything became illuminated, literally. And for the first time in over a year, I felt God's presence and I heard God's voice. I was communing with God, and that's another reason that I wanted to end my life, is because I couldn't. That's hell. That is what hell is disconnection from God. And so I was reaching up my hands to the light of God and just feeling the bliss of that reunion, coming home to God. And I saw at that moment, as my hands were up, I looked at my tattoos. And I realized in that moment, and seeing these tattoos, I remembered that even getting these tattoos was part of my destiny, because it was when I saw these tattoos, I remembered, like, oh, this is alchemy. This is the alchemy that's happening. This is what's going on inside of you right now. Is the alchemy that is bringing you to the place of yourself. You are being born right now. Out of the goo and the gunk and the shit. Everything you all went through before. This is the moment where the manure becomes a rose, where the muck becomes a lotus. But it was a remembrance when I saw these tattoos. Everything has already been done, guys. Everything that is or was or will be, it's already happened. And we're just catching up to it. We've gone down into the story, into the book, into the movie, These bodies are just time machines that allow us to go into the story. It's like a virtual reality thing. And I'm not saying we're a simulation, as in a computer simulation. It's a metaphor. But we're not these bodies. It's like if you were born in a car, like your mother gave birth to you inside of a vehicle, and you lived your entire life inside of that vehicle, never getting out. You would come to believe that you are that vehicle, right? It's the same thing with our bodies. We are light, we are energy, we are love, we are pieces of source that were implanted into this piece of biological technology, this body that is a time machine that allows us to go into God's story, to the myth that is this life, and live it out. But it's already written. and me seeing these tattoos, there was a recognition of that, a remembrance of that, of like, oh, I laid this little breadcrumb out, or God laid this little breadcrumb out for me to have this moment of, oh, okay, now I can just let go because this has already been done. It already is. Like, I'm exactly where I'm meant to be. Okay. You are whole. You are complete. You are full of meaning and purpose, and you have a destiny. Just let go.